And welcome back, footy fans, to another episode of Donnie's Disposals. I am your host, Coach Donnie Hess, here, back with another off-season supporter series. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, there may be no footy playing right now, but we are still going to talk footy. And this year, as I said, we have our off-season supporter series, international/US fans of the AFL and of these clubs. We need to talk some footy, and I thought we'll do a little bit of an international feel this year. And joining me today from Tennessee over here in the States. And I cannot wait to talk with this man. We have Clay joining us today. Clay, great to have you on the podcast today.
It's nice to be here. It's a pleasure.
It is wonderful to meet you, sir. We met over Facebook, and I cannot wait to talk footy with you, especially from somebody with part of my family heritage in Tennessee. I cannot wait. So, before we get into the footy part of the podcast, I thought let's find out just the littlest bit about the person I'm talking with outside of the game of football. So, just a little bit about you, Clay, outside of the game of football.
All right. First off, thank you for having me, Donnie. I am a big sports fan. I love, of course, I have my teams, local teams in Tennessee. I follow the Titans, unfortunately. Follow the Tennessee Volunteers. I'm an Atlanta Braves fan, Nashville SC fan, Nashville Predators fan. So all the Tennessee sports. I follow a lot of international sports as well, and just love what sports does and how it kind of unites people. Professionally, I work as a physical therapist at a local hospital here in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, which is about a half hour from Nashville. And then my hobbies involve singing. I sing in my worship team at church. I really enjoy that. And I am an avid runner. I think at this point, I've run 8 marathons, qualified for the Boston Marathon last year. So I'll be running Boston in April. So that's a little bit about me.
That is fantastic. Absolutely love it. I am a fellow nut job when it comes to sport. I think I swear I watch sport in every part of the world if I possibly could. So you and I are kindred spirits, sir. Cannot wait for it. So I always have fun with this, especially when I talk with fans that are not from Australia. I have to ask, what is your finding footy story?
Okay. Finding footy. Okay. So if you're of a certain age, I'm 52 years old. So if you're a Gen Xer and you love sport, you watched ESPN when you were a child. And
Mhm.
ESPN put the most diverse sports programming on that I think has ever been displayed on sports television in the early 80s. They were just doing whatever they could to fill in airtime. So you might recall in the early 80s, there was a period of time where I think they got a feed from Channel 7,
Mhm.
and these games were probably a week or two tape delayed. But they showed VFL at the time, VFL games on ESPN at just random hours of the night. And I had a little black and white TV in my room. We had cable, so I would watch these games. And being a boy from the rural South, just watching this exotic sport was just mind blowing for me. Okay. First of all, the contours of the field, just that oval,
Mhm.
how immense that field is. I mean, I was just like, how long, how wide is this field? It's crazy. I don't even really know what's going on here. I don't even know how long it is, how wide it is. And then just how brutal the sport is with no pads. They're just wearing the tank top shirts, and I just thought this is just the craziest thing I've ever seen. And then you've got the referees. At the time, I think they were wearing like a Panama hat and like a
Mhm.
white jacket, and doing the thing. And I just thought this is just the craziest thing. And so as a fourth, fifth, sixth grader in Manchester, Tennessee, watching this, I just felt like I'm kind of a part of the world here. In this small town, I'm getting kind of exposed to a whole nother world of sport, and just watching the games at the G, seeing 100,000 people, and just how crazy they were about this sport is like, okay, that's interesting. Now they stopped that programming in the mid '80s, and then I'll just be honest, whenever out of sight, out of mind, I never really picked up a team during that period of time because it was just so random the clubs that you would get to watch on a random Friday or Saturday. But it was always interesting. I always kind of knew that it was there, but I didn't really follow a club up until just a couple of years ago. and we'll kind of get into that. But that was my finding footy, is just the just that exposure. and and as I recall, the intro theme song was Down Under by Men at Work, and so it was just like, great.
I love
I
it.
got Down Under going, and then we go right into the play, and into the game and everything. So it was just again, just for like a 10-12 year old kid, that was just an awesome introduction to world sport.
That was fantastic. Everybody's is different, and I absolutely love it. And I know that's a common one for that age group, is that ESPN, that late night ESPN coverage. Absolutely love it. So it's always fun. So I got to ask, like I said, as a boy growing up in the South, and again, you saw it early, and like I said, you've really caught back into it over the last few years. What's your favorite part about this wonderful sport that is footy?
Well, I one thing I like about it is the guys that play the sport, they look like regular guys for the most part. An NBA player, you can see them and like, okay, yeah, they play in the NBA. Or an NFLer, you can look at those guys and like, yeah, they play professional American football. But a lot of the guys that play AFL, they just, I don't want to say they're ordinary, but they just look like that they're just regular guys that you could just kind of see, walking with their kids at the park or at the mall or something like that. So I like the fact that it's, I don't know if egalitarian is the word for it, but it just seems like that everybody's got a shot
Mhm.
to play AFL. It's a lot about hearts, a lot about courage, just a lot about guts, desire. Um, Something else I like about the sport was, at my first AFL game, one thing I was kind of blown away is I'm kind of used to the animosity and a little bit of partisanship in American sports, and especially in European sports, where there's just not a lot of, especially in Europe, there's just not a lot of mutual respect with the diehards. But one thing that blew me away was that at the GWS game that I attended, they played the opposing team's fight song before the game. And I'm like, the only other league or experience that I ever had with that was I'm a University of Tennessee graduate, and our Pride of the Southland band, as a show of respect to the opposing team, the band learns the fight song to the opposing team and plays a 15-20 second snippet of that in their pregame marching. I don't know if other schools do that, but I just always thought that that was just kind of a respectful nod to our opponent. So that was one thing that I noticed about the AFL matches, is that they play the opposing team's fight song as kind of a show of respect. Um, Another thing is, you are never out of a game in the AFL, especially if you're playing the GWS Giants in final. Um, but they're,
Sorry, I'm trying not to laugh. I'm sorry. I
it's okay,
really
it's
am.
okay. Hey, that's fine, that's fine. But it's just crazy how you can be up by 30 points, 40 points, at the end of the third period, and still you can find a way. Like, you can be down 30 or 40 and you can still find a way to win. You just get on a run, you get 4 or 5 goals, and then Uncle Mo just completely shifts, and you're getting all those inside 50s, and it's just like it just becomes so easy after struggling for so much of the game. So you're never out of a game, which just continues to make it exciting, all the way to the end. You're just never out of it. And another thing is the fact that it's a national identity. I think of American football. When I think of, we got baseball and we got American football, and those are kind of American sports. But American football is exclusive, pretty much exclusive to the U.S. And I know that there are some countries that have a little bit of AFL going on, but when I think of an Australian sport that is just like uniquely Australian, and I think most Aussies kind of embrace that, like, yeah, this is our sport and this is our identity as a sporting nation, following the AFL footy. So I kind of like that as well. And then just one more thing that I enjoy, the fact that, and I think you might have to correct me, but the kick to kick, did they allow kick to kick at the grand final as well? The Macca's kick to kick. I don't know if you're familiar with what that is, but
Yeah, and
um,
I've kick to kick is usually when the fans can come on the ground and kick
right,
footies around. Yeah, it just kind of depends on the weather. I'm not sure if they do it after the grand final, because usually they have the grand final concert, which usually there's a
right,
concert after. where they bring out the cup and everything like that. So normally not after that, but most matches, yes, the kick to kick is there. It's always kind of funny sometimes when you're listening to the broadcast and they go over the announcers that there's no kick to kick and the fans start going, so
Yeah.
it's kind of hilarious to me. But yeah, the kick to kick is fantastic. It's a great way for the kids to get on the ground and be able to kick the footy, like just to have that opportunity. And I know parents and kids like to do that all the time
Well, I
and
got a chance to
adolescents.
do the
So
kick to kick at the GWS match, and I just thought this is crazy that after this professional sport, they're allowing thousands of people to go on the same pitch that these professional athletes were performing on, and then they're getting to kick the footy around. I just thought this would never happen in the U.S.
mhm.
So those are the multitude of reasons why I love this sport.
There's so many, and everybody has a different one. It's the athleticism. It's the finger gun, the point root and toot and finger guns of the goal judges. There's so many different ways. So I love it because everybody has a different one, and it's fantastic. So I gotta ask this, as you said, you kind of got into it when you were younger and have recently gotten back into it. Have you ever had the chance to experience of playing Aussie rules football? And if not, would you if you could?
Well, being 5'7" and 160 pounds and having the vertical leap of a rhinoceros, I don't know how good I would be, but I got to like at the kick to kick, I got to do some kicking and messing around a little bit, and I could see myself getting out there and just messing around if there were some other Aussie rules blokes that wanted to get out there and do that. We have a club in Nashville and they have open
Mhm.
tryouts. You know, like even if you're
Kangaroos. Yep.
pitiful, you can get out there and play for the Roos and just come on out. And it's like I said, we're not going to turn anyone away. Anyone who loves the sport and wants to get out and mess around can. So I've considered going out there and just messing around and just seeing how I do. But I mean, it looks like such a fun sport, but I might lose a few teeth and might have a back injury or two. But it's obviously it'd be interesting at 52 years old. I don't know how wise that would be because I just look at risk reward at this point in my life where it's like, is it worth
Mhm.
doing this for like a few minutes of fun, but then being laid up for a few weeks and missing out on some other things that I enjoy? But yeah, I don't
No,
know. We'll see.
I totally get it. The one thing I would say for us, everybody's like, it's so brutal. Honestly, when you play a lot of local stuff, everybody kind of takes care of each other, so you usually don't. So if you like ever went to a Nashville Kangaroos like Metro game, like if you reach out to the club and ask them, when do you play in a Metro? They'll probably let you play, and it's far less brutal than a regular game. Like say Nashville's playing St. Louis or playing Cincinnati, then it might be a little bit more aggressive because you're playing other people. But if usually like especially with the Des Moines Roosters that I coach up here when we play locally, most of the time it's not nearly as brutal, but it's a lot of fun. And I would also say your marathon running would come majorly in handy because you have probably much better cardio than about 90% of the people that probably come out and play over here in the
I
States.
think I
So,
would be pretty good in the midfield, at least
or at least
advancing
out
the
in
ball.
space, or at least out in
Yeah,
space where you could just run.
yeah.
So,
It's the
so,
bounce. It's the
so
bouncing I got to work on. That
I,
bounce is so tricky.
it's not difficult. I'll catch you after the podcast and explain it a little bit because it's actually not that difficult. It's just it's very you have to be kind of almost perfect in your technique on how you do it technique wise, on how to do it correctly. I've been working with my guys up here, but again, it's all ground too. Like sometimes if you the AFLers have perfect ground, like not uneven. It's perfect. It looks like a carpet. But when you're dealing with some of the stuff that we do over here in the States, where you're dealing with parks where the ground's not always level, sometimes the bounce is going to go a little bit wonky. So it's definitely one of those. But I can explain to you after the podcast. I don't want to take up too much time trying to do that. So alrighty. So so you kind of say so we'll go. My next question was how is it that you found the AFL? And as you kind of said, you found it on ESP. You kind of found it on ESPN. So we'll jump right into it. You've kind of talked about it a couple of times, and for the people that are watching the YouTube version of this podcast, they know. But really quickly, who is your club, and how is it that you got into this particular club?
Yeah, well, I'm a GWS Giants supporter. Um, I'll tell you, this is probably Donnie going to be the lamest origin story for fandom that you may have ever heard. But I'll tell you this: in 2023, in the early part of the year, we had decided we're going to. Well, we decided in 2020 we were going to go, or actually in 2019 we were going to go to Australia for a family vacation, and then we were going to be leaving in May of 20 and staying 17, 18 days. Of course, you know what happened in March of
Hmm.
2020. So everything got refunded. Some things got refunded. Most everything did. And so we were like, okay, well, we'll regroup and we'll try this again in a few years. So then into 22, things were looking like, okay, I think we can get back out and do some international trips. So let's go ahead and plan this. So we planned a trip to Sydney, to Uluru, Ulara, and then also to Cairns, up in the, probably pronouncing that wrong, up in the
Cans.
Great
Yep.
Barrier Reef, northern Queensland,
Yep. Cans.
and
So,
Cairns, yeah.
yep.
And so we planned that trip, and then so we were there for a little over 2 weeks. And so I'm a big sports tourist. I've been to soccer games in England, Argentina, Guatemala. I've also been to a Japanese professional baseball game. So whenever I do international travel, that's one of the things that I look for is, can I catch a game, a professional game in this city or in this area that I'm at, just to kind of, that's just another way to immerse yourself in the culture of the city. So many tourists stay out of those areas. They want to just kind of do the typical touristy things. But
Mhm.
I'm like, no, get me in where the regular folks are and let me experience that, because that's just a good way to put your finger on the pulse of a town or even a country, as how passionate they are about their sports. So started doing some homework, knew that we were going to be in Sydney, because the other cities that we were in obviously don't have AFL teams. So I was just hoping and praying that one of the Sydney clubs was going to have a home game during the time that we were there. So actually, the first day that I arrived in Sydney, it was Sunday, June the 4th. And of course, I had already planned this ahead months in advance. I saw the fixtures and saw that they were playing, the GWS was playing Richmond. So I immediately started following the GWS Facebook page and just started doing my homework, because I said, okay, this is going to be I'm going to go to the showground. I'm going to watch a game there. So I became a GWS fan because they had a home game in Sydney the week I was there. Okay, so again, I just want to admit that that's my origin story. That doesn't diminish the fact that I'm an avid fan now, because I've adopted them and I love those guys. I love the Orange Tsunami. I mean, I'm a big fan of theirs and follow them pretty avidly. But that's where it started. So here's what I did. I reached out as soon as I got on the page. I started looking at some of the, I guess, regular posters, contributors on
Mhm.
the page, and found, I don't know, five or six. And I thought, I'm going to just reach out to them personally.
Mhm.
It might be a little awkward, but I just private messaged them. I said, hey, you don't know me. I'm from the US. I'm coming to Sydney. I'm going to be going to this game. I've already bought tickets, but I'm just asking, would it be okay if I hung out with you and just, I'm going to be staying out in right around the Olympic Stadium, so I'll be able to walk. After I get off the train, I'll just be able to walk to the showground from where I'm staying. And I mean, I would just love to hang out. I said, do you guys tailgate? I mean, I didn't know. I was just like,
Mhm. Mhm.
maybe they'll tailgate before the game or do something like that, and I can just meet some of the fans and all that. And so I sent that out to five or six people. But then there was one gentleman who responded, of those five or six. He responded back pretty quickly, and he said, "Yeah," he said, I'm a supporter. I've been a supporter from day one. I'm a club member, and yeah, I'd love to meet you. I'd love to, show you around and everything, kind of just give you the red carpet treatment and just just have a great day out at the showground. And so, so we kind of conversed a few times. I told him when my flight was arriving. So I land in Sydney about 7:30 Sunday morning after a
Mhm.
15-hour flight from LA. So I'm dog tired. Didn't really sleep on the plane. Then I get then I get on a train and then on a bus to get out to Western Sydney, which is quite the haul. If anybody, anybody that's been out there knows how far it is from the airport to the Olympic Stadium. So I ended up getting out there to my hotel around 10 or so. It was one of those Sunday 110 120 bounces. So got to my hotel half hour later or so. My friend Michael, meets me up. He says, "All right, we'll just walk in." And then he said, "I know you already got a ticket, but I've got an extra ticket because I buy tickets for my company, and you're going to sit down right at the center, right at the center box. You're going to just be a few rows off the field. You're going to have a great time." And he's a club member, so he allowed me to go up to the club, and I got to sit up there watching the VFL game because there was a VFL game before the AFL club was playing.
Mhm.
So I got to see a little bit of the VFL game, and then most importantly, before the game even started, a lot of the AFL first teamers were out there watching the VFL
Mhm.
reserves playing, and I guess he just was either comfortable enough with the team or just had access. But he introduced me to Toby Green. He introduced me to some of the other players, to Coach Kingsley, and so it was so within 4 hours of me landing in Australia, I had had a chance to meet and get a photo with the greatest GWS player of all time. And I'm embarrassed to say this, but there are people that live probably that have followed the Giants since 2012 and have never had that privilege. And so I just thought this is amazing. I mean, this is just amazing. Like that would be like me landing in Tennessee from Australia, and 4 hours later, I'm getting a selfie with Derrick Henry,
Mhm.
who was obviously with the Titans a few years ago. But it was just amazing, and so it's just like I love it. And I talked about Nashville, and like, oh yeah, we know about Nashville. It's interesting. They were as curious about me as I was about them. In the few
Mhm.
moments that I had a chance to talk to some of the players and the coach. But anyway, that's kind of my story about how I started following the Giants, and then since then, I was like, I'm not just gonna just go this one time and then just be, oh, that was fun, and just completely forget about it. It's like, no, they lost a tough game that day, and I think it made them that made them 4-8 that year, or at that juncture of the season, about halfway through the season. Of course, immediately after that game, they caught fire and got in finals,
Mhm.
obviously. And my friend Mike says, yeah, you were the good luck charm. It just didn't rub off in round 12 when you were there. But hey, since then, mate, we've been just been going gangbusters here. And it's just so hard to follow in the States if you're wanting to follow live. It's just I love those 120 Sunday bounces because I can catch it in Central Time 10 p.m. Saturday night.
Mhm.
That's reasonable. I love the 7:30 bounces because you can get up early. I get up early anyway, and I can follow that at 4:30. It's those mid-afternoon ones that are brutal.
Mhm.
The ones that are starting at like 1 in the morning, those are tough. But I don't have the app to watch the games, but I listen to most all of the GWS matches on ABC, Australian Broadcasting Corporation, the radio feed. And
Mhm.
then on the off chance that they're on FS2, like the Collingwood the opening round game last year was on FS2. I think that might have been the only Giants game on that early Saturday morning broadcast. Got to watch a game there, but yeah, I do the best I can following the team and kind of keeping up with what's going on.
That is fantastic. And what I think is funny is I think I know exactly who you're talking about because I've had him on the podcast. I know Michael quite well. Does he have a green headband that says Giants?
No, this is an older guy. He's a
Okay.
businessman who is just very supportive of the
Okay.
club. He buys. He's just a very generous man. He
Okay.
Most games he'll buy 15 or 20 tickets, and he'll just treat his staff for a afternoon out. And even there were a couple of Richmond Tigers fans that had those tickets too. I'm like, why are you giving tickets to a Tigers fan? But he's like, hey, we're all friends here and everything. But anyway, it was great meeting. It was great meeting him. Great meeting his son Alex, his grandkids, and a lot of his coworkers. He's like I said, just a wonderful guy, and I've continued to keep up with him over the last year and a half as well. We've become friends.
That's awesome. Because I have a friend of mine who is a day one supporter who I had on the podcast, and I'll send you the link with it. But he's pretty well known amongst most AFL crowds is that he goes to every game that he possibly can. He is a super fan. It's so much fun. So and a huge Giants supporter, and him and I go back and forth a lot on that. So I was just wanted to double check if we knew the same Michael. So but that is an awesome story. That is absolutely fantastic. There's nothing lame about it. Hey. my favorite part is that you picked a team and you stuck with it. That's the biggest thing because I know that sometimes, especially over here, I think you know it a lot. Is American fans sometimes can be fickle. We want winners, so
Bear with
sometimes it's a little bit easier for an American fan to go, you know what? I don't want to be this team's fan. I want to be this team's fan because they're winning. Like that's one of the things that I do appreciate about the American about the Aussie society is that for many of them, when they pick the team, they're with that team till death. Like there is like I've had some when I've discussed with some Australians, they've said you don't change teams. You pick your team and you stay with it. So that was this. I absolutely love that. So I appreciate that. That is a cool origin story of your club. So I got to ask that. So as you said, you're a Giant supporter now. Can you remember the first club item that you were ever given or bought?
Okay, this is so funny. The game before, it was a road game. I can't remember who they played in round 11, but it was Toby Green's 200th match with the Giants. You know, he was their first pick. He's, you know, basically, if you're in Australia and you say Giants, Toby Green is the face of the franchise.
Hmm.
And so, as a way to commemorate his 200th game, which was then his 201st game, the first Giants item that I received was a cutout of Toby Green.
I love it.
And so
That is
I, yeah,
fantastic.
I have preserved this thing because it was like it went in my bag. It went through three airports, three different countries, and it still made it back relatively pristine. But I have treasured this Toby Green face cutout since the moment I got it. I was just like taking really good care of it. But this is the first Giants item that I ever was given. And then Michael was so nice to he gave me a couple of caps, a couple of ball caps that
Mhm.
that he had. He also gifted me this scarf, and so anyway, so by the end of the afternoon, I had a couple of ball caps, I had a scarf. I bought this several months later, but yeah, I had quite a bit of Giant swag, and it was interesting because I didn't really know how I would rate with this guy, but
Mhm.
I brought a lot of Titans stuff. I brought a Titan scarf. I brought, because I'm a Tennessee Titans fan, I brought a lot of Titan swag, and I said, hey, let's trade. I'm going to give you some Titans stuff
Mhm.
since you were so nice to give me some of this Giants paraphernalia. And so he's got that. I think he's got that somewhere in his office or something. So I just thought that was a great cultural exchange doing that.
It's like the soccer jersey exchange. That's
Yeah, yeah.
fantastic. I
But
absolutely love it.
Donnie, I'm still I would love I see these guys wearing the Guernseys
Hmm.
and I just don't think that I can pull it off. I'd love to
Yeah.
wear, you know how a lot of us, you probably, I don't know, you're probably American sports fan. You probably have a jersey or two of your teams.
Hmm. They
And
do.
there's no shame in wearing that jersey to games. I've got a Titans jersey. I've got a, Preds jersey that I'm going to wear when I go to, I've got a National SC jersey. I wear the same one every game. And, you can get by wearing a kind of a short sleeve regular jersey, no matter your body build or whatever. It's hard to pull that Guernsey off. Agree or
Hmm.
disagree?
No, I 100% agree. I've pretty much I think the only time I've ever worn like the indigenous Guernsey that I have hanging up that most people see, I wore a red shirt underneath it just because like I'm not a small guy and I'm not one of those that I want to give everybody a gun show. So I've done that. I
Yeah.
try not to. I for me they're more of display stuff. I've got a few Swans Guernseys. Like I said, I actually had this the black swan that I have in the background here was gifted. It was actually I was actually gifted to me by a very nice woman who I know who lives in New South Wales that sent it up to me, and I thank her every day for that because that's my favorite Guernsey that I've ever received. It was absolutely magnificent because I absolutely love that design. Um,
And
so
don't
no,
you love
I
Aboriginal
think it's
design?
fantastic. No, I completely get what you. It's the one thing that kind of gets me is I of the Guernseys that I've purchased, I've really never worn them out like to anything. Again, I have not been to Australia. It's something that's on my bucket list, but we'll discuss that a little bit later. But it
Yeah.
is one of those where it was like if I do, like, I don't know if I'm gonna rock the Guernsey. I'll probably just rock. I have t-shirts and stuff like that that I'll wear. But I don't know if I could rock the Guernsey. Maybe if it was cold enough and I could get a hoodie underneath it, maybe. But I don't know about that. So no,
I think
I
Donnie,
completely
you're
get
talking.
your I completely
Yeah.
get your conundrum when it comes to that. Is that it's not easy.
My
So
hesitance. But
Yeah,
you were
no.
mentioning Aboriginal designs, and I think it's awesome that they have every club has a special Aboriginal design, and every club
Mhm.
has an Anzac design, and I just think that that's awesome. Obviously American sports does the same thing, and I'm sure that some of that mentality is, hey, we can sell more gear by doing that, um, but the last year's GWS Aboriginal design was just off the chain amazing, and
Mhm.
I would love to buy some of those things. The shipping though, oh, the
Yep.
shipping.
The
I just
shipping is the one thing that gets a lot
but
of people. I tell many people, I've kind of made it my tradition that I kind of, if I'm gonna order something, I'll order it for my birthday, and I'm just gonna order a lot. I'm gonna order $200-300 worth of stuff because it's gonna make the shipping worth it. But it's
and
like,
sometimes you can get the shipping for free if you order so much.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's the one thing though that I've noticed is that doesn't really happen with a lot of Australia, with a lot of the clubs very much. When I've discussed with a few people that I know that do get stuff shipped over,
yeah.
it's you almost want to make it a little bit more expensive just to make the shipping worth it, because I think the least I've ever spent for shipping something over here was like $60, and it's like, which that's not bad, but it's not easy. The good thing is at this present point, the exchange rate kind of evens it out a little bit because you're not paying as much over here in American dollars as you would Australian dollars. And again, this is not me bragging Australians that are listening to this. That is not my point here. But it is the one thing that kind of it lessens the blow a little bit when I can spend 400 in Australian dollars and actually only spend about 300 and 310. I don't mind that. That's the one part I don't mind. So we'll rein it in, coach. Rein it in. So alrighty. As we kind of said, you picked up the team by going out there. So and now that you've come back, I like asking this because fandom is different with everybody. As you kind of said, you've seen English soccer and in Argentinian football where you don't mix with each other. There's a hatred, almost a vitriol between the two. But what I love fandom. I love hearing how people fan because nobody fans exactly the same. Nobody does it exactly the same. And as Americans or international fans, it's even harder for us, as we kind of said, with the time difference. So I ask you this, sir. How would you describe your fandom of the GWS Giants?
Well, I would say obviously that I'm not as committed as I could be because I could buy the package, the AFL package on their website, and I could stream every single game.
Hmm.
Um, I've looked at that as far as like a cost, looking at the cost and just looking at the percentage of games that I would actually watch live, and it's probably about a third of the games that are in that time frame where it's a 4:30 a.m. kick or bounce, or it's a 10:20 or
Hmm.
10:10 p.m. bounce. Um, and looking at that, I was like, I just don't know if it's worth buying the package. But I do I watch it on delay for free. You can watch it 24 hours later. So my fandom is usually a 24-hour delay fandom. Usually, I get on the AFL site. I will usually watch the game in its entirety, which it ends up getting shrunken down into about
Hmm.
uh, a 2 hour commitment because they take out obviously the breaks and the after
Commercials.
the
Yep.
goal they go right to the bounce and all of that. And so you can get through a game on delay in about 2 hours. So that's pretty much my fandom. I wish I could say, oh yeah, I call all my friends and we watch the game. I have become I've tried to be an AFL missionary, so to
Hmm.
speak, for my friends and just say, come over to the house and watch a game. You'll love it. It's absolutely amazing. The athleticism and the speed and everything and the accuracy and the fact that they're doing these accurate 50, 60-yard punts with somebody trying to knock them down and they're on a full sprint. Okay. And just trying to explain everything. I
Hmm.
just haven't really had many takers because of the time
Time
or
difference.
what
Yep.
else, what everything else is going on. So my fandom, again, probably lamest fandom of all time. I'm usually laying in bed with the phone under the covers watching the game on my phone, or I'm in a room like I am now, sequestered from my family, trying to watch the highlights from the previous day's action.
Hmm. No, I completely get it. Again, everybody is different. There's nothing wrong with that. You still keep track of the team, you still watch the highlights, so you're into it. It's not like you're just kind of casual. If I see it, I see it. I don't, I don't. Again, everybody fans differently. Not everybody. Again, I'll raise my hand. I have not missed a game live for either the men or the women in about 3 years, and that includes 2 a.m. kicks. I can't tell you how many times I have Australian friends going, Donnie, you're up at 2 a.m. to watch this game. Are seriously? In fact, I don't know how much you pay attention to scores. I will legitimately tell you when the Swans got absolutely smashed by Port Adelaide earlier this year, I had about 5 friends of mine who were Swans fans go, Donnie, go to sleep. Just go to bed. It's not worth it. Go to bed.
I was
So,
enjoying that. I think that was one of those that might have been one of the 4:30 kicks where, I mean, yeah, they got
yep.
absolutely crushed.
Yep.
It was on FS2, and
Yep.
that was a little Schadenfreude there. I was just kind of enjoying South Melbourne getting their teeth kicked in there on that one. But again, the banter. I'll say this about the fandom and banter back and forth. There were some Richmond Tigers fans that were kind of in our section, and
Hmm.
they were nothing but just friendly, gracious. It was, a little bit of bants back and forth, but
Hmm.
nothing of the vitriol that you would see in Europe or in South America or even in American sport. So that was one thing that was really refreshing, was just kind of the back and forth, and really, and I know GWS supporters have a pretty large animosity against that club on the east side of town. But really, I mean, to me, it's just the back and forth with, oh yeah, you guys are the South Melbourne Swans. Well, you guys are the Canberra Giants, and there's just that little back and forth. And that's about as far as it goes, because when you're detached from that, you
Hmm.
don't have the memories of like a really negative game, and then like walking back to the train or walking back to your car and hearing a Swannies fan, yelling at you. I don't have that personal trauma like
Hmm.
I've had from American sporting events, leaving a game and just utter despair after choking a lead, and then the opposing team is like just rubbing it in your face. That leaves a mark on you.
Hmm.
And I've had those experiences in on just about all the teams that I've supported over the decades in the US. I don't really have that experience about Oz, so I really can't say that I have any kind of hatred or vitriol or any kind of
Hmm.
animosity against the club. It's really to the contrary, that I'm sure you're like me, that if you see anybody in the US wearing anything AFL, it's all I can do not to run up to them and say, "Tell me about why you've got that lion scarf. Tell me about that
Hmm.
swan. Why do you have that swan's cap?"
Hmm.
I just want to ask them, how did you start following AFL? I've had that experience 3 or 4 times. Actually, a friend of mine, or one of my cross country runners, he spent a few years in Sydney,
Hmm.
and I don't think his parents really followed the club that much,
Hmm.
but they went to a few Swans games, and his mom had a Swans beanie on. We did a Thanksgiving turkey trot here in our town, and she had the Swans beanie on, and so I had to say something to her about. I'm like, I like the beanie. That's really nice. And anyway, so that's just kind of how you are whenever you're kind of in a elite club, I guess, a
Hmm.
fraternity of sort, where you see somebody else wearing something AFL. You gotta stop and say something to them.
Yep. Or my favorite is when you get people that have no idea what it is and they have to ask and you try to explain it, and it's always fun because you have to give a condensed version. So I
Yeah,
100%
of
agree with
course,
you.
with
It's
with
if
with
if
the Giants, it's like that doesn't look like the San Francisco Giants
yep.
logo. That doesn't look like the New York Giants. So there's a little confusion there. I'm like, no, this is AFL. This is Aussie rules. Let me tell you about it.
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah,
the one thing I remember going to a family friend's daughter's track meet, and I was getting something at the concession stand. And like, what's the Sydney Swan? So I had to like explain it. It was quite fun because they looked at me like, how did like there was definitely, especially being me in central, I mean, heartland America, and I've got something from Sydney, Australia on my head, and I'm at this track meet in Johnston, Iowa. So it was really kind of funny. So I think we've all had those moments, especially with, I was like, I joke with some people is like, I say that Aussie rules and AFL, especially up here in the States, I said it's kind of like Fight Club, except for you want people to know about Fight Club, even though you're not supposed to tell it. It's the funniest thing about that when it comes to it. So I've heard you talk a little bit, so I think I know the answer. And as you kind of said, you don't have this plethora of years over. Plus, unfortunately, GWS is one of the relatively newer clubs. So I'll break it down to this. Do you have a favorite player? Um, on the GWS Giants currently? And did you have a favorite player that maybe has left GWS and now plays for somebody else?
Well, I guess this off season is really the first off season that I feel like we've lost somebody that was like a major part of the team, a building block of the team. He was there from day one. He was one of the original draft picks, and that's Nick Haynes, one of our staunch defenders. Um, his leaving the club is probably like the first loss that I've experienced where it's like, dang, I'm gonna miss that guy. So I think he's with Carlton now, but so he's the first player that I have lost, and it's kind of tough. I mean, it's just the business. It's the nature of the game.
Mhm.
I'll tell you another guy. He didn't play much because he got hurt. He was hurt. He just had bad luck. But Cooper Hamilton, young
Mhm.
fella, he just never could stay healthy with our club. But he was amazing on social media, and I know that that's one of the other things. Social media is a way that I fan because I do a lot of back and forth with a lot of GWS supporters, and Cooper on our Facebook page he was just gold. I mean, he's just so funny and did all kinds of funny things. And I feel like that a lot of AFLers that I've spoken to in Australia, they kind of say, yeah, GWS is kind of my second team, and it's mainly because of social media because they're so witty and they're so funny about kind of poking jabs at some of the other teams and some of the inside jokes. But yeah, so there was that. But my favorite all time player, of course, is going to be Toby.
Mhm.
I think he's the face of the franchise. It's going to be
And
a really really fun
not
game.
just because his face made it all the way to the States.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I'm
But
sorry. I had to.
face of the franchise. But there are a couple of younger players that I've really grown quite fond of. The one I would say that made the biggest impact for me last year was watching Darcy Jones just sprint. I mean, just he's got some wheels on him, and I mean he's a bit undersized. He wears that helmet, that concussion helmet kind
Mhm.
of thingy. So he's a little unusual looking out there. But man, I call him the pocket rocket. That kid can just jet when he's in open space. And so I would say right now, just watching Darcy out there, when I get to see him out there, I get excited. He's probably my favorite like up and coming player that we've got.
Yeah, he'll be fun. He'll be fun to watch. GWS is really kind of latched on to that quick little midfield forward type. It'll be fun. It'll be fun to watch how he develops. So you are into it. So I got to ask your thoughts on last year because I know going into the finals, I would have said GWS was one of those teams a lot of people were super high on and getting to the finals. Unfortunately, their finals run was a little short-lived, unfortunately. And as you kind of mentioned earlier, the lack of being able to hold a lead in the fourth quarter seemed to really kill them. So, as an American fan, your thoughts on last year? Because again, you make finals, you make it to the top four, but unfortunately, your finals was probably not the way you wanted it to have turned out.
You could not have been more correct in that assessment. But I'm going to tell you that I'm 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 a little older now. I'm too old to be bitter and upset and angry. When one of my teams ends the season, I do kind of an assessment of how things went,
Mhm.
and I look at it on balance. I had a lot of joy following this team this year. First off, we started off with the most wins to open a season in franchise history, so that was great. But
Mhm.
our season was kind of in thirds. The first third of the season, we were amazing, and then I think we lost one to Carlton. Then that put us on a little bit of a tailspin. That middle third of the season, including two matchups against our kryptonite, the Sydney Swans, put us out of we weren't I don't think we were ever out of finals, but we were kind of down there pretty low. We were obviously out of the top four where we were cruising, and we were looking top four easy at the beginning of the season. But then we kind of got our second win there in the third trimester, if you will, of the season,
Mhm.
and picked up some big wins to where that last game against the doggies, it didn't even matter because we had already secured fourth place. And really, that's what you want. You just want to be in that top four. So going in, yeah, I felt like I was like most AFL fans that like, hey, if I'm putting money on anybody, I'm looking at this team, how relatively complete they are, what they've got going in the back, what they've got, the speed in the midfield, and just the ability to get those inside 50s and just the accuracy of Jesse Hogan and just some of the other weapons that we had on offense. That's like, hey, they could make a run here. When we drew Sydney, of course, at the SCG, I just I wasn't optimistic going in. I don't know. Maybe if you told me if we lost to the Swannies by it was either 4 or 6
You're
at
six.
the
Yep.
beginning of the game, it's going to be a good game, and but you're still going to lose. I might have taken that and been like, it's okay. We're going to be at
Mhm.
home, and we're going to probably play. I don't know if we played Briz, we played the Lions, of course, but I was thinking that whoever was eighth, I thought they might pull off the upset against Brisbane in that preliminary round. But anyway, I just like I still like our chances. I still think
Mhm.
we can make a run. But yeah, coughing up that I don't know 28-point lead
Mhm.
um, midway through the third, and just watching it, and just like it's going. I'm watching this, and I just see that okay, yeah, it's slipping away. We're trying to hang on. We're trying to hang on, but it's just going. It's going, and we're just falling in, and then we just go back to like, hey, we've not beaten these guys in how many years? And it was just like, yeah, we're playing Sydney. We're not supposed to win, and it just everything just kind of imploded in that first round game. And then so then you move to Brisbane, and that's a whole other thing where we just midway through the third, we're up 44 points,
Mhm.
something like that. It was over 40, and then it's just like, okay, we got to, I think they got inside of 30, and then we get a goal right at the beginning of the fourth. And so then we're back up by 31. I'm like, okay, we've righted the ship. We're good. We're going to be able to see this thing through. And again, we just could not hold a lead. And it happened. It happened a few times in the regular season as well. Um, I mean, it almost happened 3 or 4 times, and we just barely, get something, just a fortunate bounce or just a crazy defensive mark that we shouldn't have gotten to see the game out. It's just like, guys, you can't do this to me. But yeah, so I'm going to say the season as a whole was a disappointment. I mean, you can't get those two losses, just losing in straight sets like that. You can't get that out of your brain. You just think about that all off season. I just hope Kingers is using that as motivation. I just feel like that he's looking at the positive, like I am. Like, hey, guys, we had one of the best clubs in the league, and why can we not do that in 25? Why can't we go back? I mean, we got the pieces here. We're still a pretty young team. So yeah, so disappointed, but enjoyed just some of the amazing moments in the season. And that Hawthorn game, that was my favorite game of the year. I think it was in Canberra, kind of in the towards the end of the season. Just an amazing. That was one where we came back. We were down, I don't know,
Mhm.
25 points in the fourth and made an amazing comeback. But yeah, and the Collingwood game to start the season, especially after Mason made those comments about our ground. There's some truth to that. It's probably the least desirable ground in the league, but it was funny that he talked about it. Like, why are we having an opening round game in a place where they show the animals? They have these horse shows here, or these animal shows. We had a petting zoo outside the ground with Mason, a cutout of Mason
I
Cox. I
remember.
don't know if you
Yep.
saw that on social, but with Mason Cox in there in the petting zoo with all the animals. But anyway, those were a couple of highlights of 24. But 25 is going to be a great year. I'm looking forward to what our guys are going to do, and we'll see what happens come March. I think we start the season again with the Pies, so we'll see.
Opening round. Yep.
Yeah,
It'll definitely be interesting. No, I'm 100% with you. It just leaves it leaves just such a sour taste in your mouth after such a great home and away season to kind of go away in straight sets really kind of it dampens what was a really good season. And like I said, you had your moments, and I think almost every team in the league had a little span of at least 2 to 3 games where they played like shizen, shall we say? But it's always interesting. But no, I'm 100% with you. I thought GWS really took the Mickey out of Mason Cox in that game in that opening round. I had to chuckle. I had to chuckle at
Yeah.
that for sure. So as we said, we're into the off season. We're getting closer. We're getting closer and closer to the next season. Sometimes these long winter months up here are always fun. So I got to ask you, sir, your thoughts on next year. Are you one of those people that puts expectations, or are you one that you kind of go into the season, you're confident, but you kind of just go into it? So your thoughts on next year?
Well, I feel like that a realistic expectation is finals for us this
Mhm.
year. I think anything less than finals would be a disappointment. I think that that would put some people on the hot seat if we were out of finals, going down the stretch. Um, I I don't I'm not really impressed with I'm not impressed with the lack of action in free agency. I feel like a couple of these draft picks are going to make some noise. The first two picks, I think, especially will. I can't think of the. I know Harrison Oliver. He was our second pick. He's going to be a defender. I can't remember the first pick, but I like he's in that Darcy Jones mold. He's a shorter guy, really quick in the midfield. Um, and Kingers, he's given me belief that those guys are going to crack the squad. They're going to be in there and they're going to have meaningful minutes and they're going to make an impact. So but then we've still got our old guard there that are, I think, are still going to hold down the fort and do what they've been doing the last several years. So um, I, uh, I've not listened to anything what the pundits say. I have no idea what the experts in Australia are saying, but I feel like that we should definitely be finals, and then really in the playoff format that they have in finals, anybody can win it. You get in that tournament, anything can happen, and that's another
Mhm.
thing, Donnie. I didn't mention about what I love about the sport is the way the playoff structure is. A lot of Americans just do not understand it, but I guess maybe we do a little bit because of those play-in games in the NBA now. That 7-10, that 7-8, and nine
Mhm.
ten game. It's kind of that same way that if you're that 7-8, you can lose a game and you can still be in the playoffs because you had a higher seed. Um, I wish that we did that in American sports. I think it gives the teams that have a much better regular season a little bit of an advantage
Mhm.
to where if you win that first round game, you're automatically in the semifinal. But if you lose it, hey, you know what? You were in the top four, good season. You get a mulligan, and
Mhm.
you get to continue to compete. I don't know. It's a format that's unlike any other playoff format that I've ever seen. It might exist in other parts of the world, but I just like the fact that it does give you hope. No matter one of any of those eight teams could go on a run, and if you're in the top four, you can even stub your toe in that opening round and still have some life.
Mhm. Yeah, it's very unique. It's fun to explain because of the crossover, because of the fact that if you win the elimination final, and if you find a way to knock off the team in straight sets, then you actually switch sides of the bracket when it comes to the semifinal, as we call over here in the States semifinal, they call preliminary final, which is always fun sometimes to remember when I'm talking with Americans that their wordage is just a little bit different. But I agree with you. It really does. It tells you that, hey, the top four, you get that little bit of extra help when it comes to it, when it comes a chance to make the finals a little bit more. So 100% with you on that. So the next question, as you said, you're not a huge, you don't dive into a lot of this stuff. So I'm interested to see how you respond to this one, because over here we have the general manager. That's the person that makes all the moves, that they do the trades and everything like that. Over in Australia, they call that person the list manager. So I'm going to have a little bit of fun with you. For one day, I'm going to install you as the list manager for the GWS Giants, and all of the other 17 teams in the league have open. You can pick one player from another team to bring into GWS to get them over that hump and to maybe win a premiership. Who would that one player that you would bring into GWS be?
Does it have to be somebody that I personally like?
It can be whoever you want. If you feel that you want to bring back an old GWS player, have at it.
No, it's somebody that he's on a really successful club. He has pretty good lineage. His dad was a pretty good footballer. He's a winner, and I hate to say it that he's a winner, but Nick Dacos, I would want him on my team all day.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like playing him. He just how many teams has he killed over the years? But that dude, I know some of my GWS friends were like, "What are you saying?" But man, I'd love to have Nick Dacos on my team. I just think he's a leader. Not a lot of he just goes out and does his business. He's the whisperer. He's just the
Mm-hmm.
whisperer. He just goes about his business and very very soft spoken, not a lot of drama. He's not a diva at all. I don't think he is. I mean, maybe he
Mm-hmm.
does stuff in all. I don't know. He
Nope.
just seems like he's just like the consummate professional and just a leader. And I don't know. I don't want to like go on with my love fest with Nick Dacos, but I do think he would. I don't know. I think a lot of folks would like him on their squad. They might not want to admit it. Like, yeah, I'll take him.
He's one of those guys that honestly, I any team could find a way to get him into their squad and he would instantly make an impact and an improvement to your team. So I would not disagree with you. The kid is so good it's almost angering sometimes because he's just so good. He's just so smooth. He makes it look so damn easy that it's infuriating at times. But I 100% see what you mean. The kid is super talented. The one thing I've heard, and I know this very much, he's humble. He very much is humble. He does not basically think his, to use the old adage I've heard, he does believe his does stink. So he's not one of those guys that's super above himself. So I got to give the kid that. The fact that he plays for Collingwood is probably the reason why some people detest him because he's so good that I think that's the fun thing with that. But that is not a bad choice at all. In fact, I think he would probably fit GWS quite well in that team for sure. So I tell a lot of people I am a huge supporter of the women's game. I am a huge supporter of the AFLW and women's footy in general. And as you said, you're not the massive supporter. So I got to ask, do you watch any of the GWS AFLW team? And if not, is there a way that the AFLW can find a way to bring old Clay Dwyer over to have him watch the GWS Giants women's team?
Well, social media does a really good job of getting the ladies out there, and they show the highlights, and they do player profiles. Because when you get to know a little bit about the players and like their story and where they came from, you start getting more attached to some of the players.
Mhm.
I just really haven't done that yet. I know that they've got two or three really good draft picks from the draft just a little while ago,
Mhm.
and I think as the longer I follow the team, the more I'll start, picking out some of these players and just saying, hey, I want to find out how she does and all that. But right now, I'll just be honest, I've not really devoted myself to doing that
Mhm.
on the women's with the women's game.
There's nothing wrong with that. And I tell a lot of people, I enjoy it because the women's game is a little bit different. And there is a little bit. And again, I've had many connections. In fact, I've talked with former captain of GWS, Alicia Eva, who's an absolutely fantastic young woman. Absolutely love her to death. She actually coaches in the men's program as well. Last time that I spoke with her. So absolutely fantastic. I never try to push anybody into it. If you want to, absolutely, I think you'll enjoy it because the women, it's definitely more family oriented, which I absolutely love. And I think the women's sport is growing. And as you said, this last draft class is probably one of the best that's ever been through. I think there's several very well-known Australians and some legends of the game that I think that have just got drafted in this draft class. That's how talented they are. I cannot wait for it. But as I say, it's to each their own. If you don't, that's fine. If you do, the AFLW fans that I know of will welcome you with open arms. They cannot wait. So normally, this is where I go. Have you ever been to Australia to see a game? Well, you've told us a wonderful story of going over and seeing that. So I will jump over that one. So I know when you were over there, I got to ask this. When you were over there, did you have any food at the game? And if so, what was your favorite thing that you had?
The best thing I had was the meat pie. I just felt like that's, I mean, they had hot dogs and they had nachos. They had a lot of American fare
Mhm.
there, but you don't get a meat pie typically at an American football game or a basketball game. So I had to go for the meat pie. while I was there, and I was not disappointed. It was a
Hmm.
good price, and it was pretty filling. But yeah, at GWS they had a lot of different. They had Indian food, they had Asian food. I mean, it was pretty wide variety of food that they had there at the showground. But yeah, I went for the traditional pie.
Oh, it's fantastic. I know that's the one thing that I when I chat with a bunch of Americans, that's the first thing they want to do is we gotta have an Aussie meat pie. So and it's fantastic. So as you said, you got to go to a game, and I know did you get a chance to kind of see other parts of the ground during the game? Because for me, I'm one of those when I do go over, I want to get the best possible seat. I want to get where I can enjoy the game and be able to watch it the way I usually do. So for you, what would you say is the ideal place to sit to watch a game of football?
Well, I was our my original ticket was behind the goal,
Hmm.
um, just above the supporters. You know, with those humongous palm
Yep. Yep. Oh no, I hope it's.
in those.
Mhm.
But yeah, that was my original seat, kind of behind, and that would have been neat to be there for the game because whenever they kick it through, sometimes you might be able to catch the ball, you know, on a goal. Um, but um, but being at the midfield, right there at the center square, you're kind of seeing all the action, and you're kind of like get on the 50-yard line to use an American football analogy.
Mhm.
But I took time in the second half to just walk around the entire oval and just kind of get an idea of the perspective. And I mean, there were more rich. I'm just gonna be honest. There were more Richmond Tiger fans there than I think Giants fans, just because Richmond's a pretty big club and pretty well
Mhm.
supported in and out of Victoria. But anyway, just getting a chance to say hi to people. I know it's kind of weird. I'm a very just
Mhm.
um, extroverted person and just like to say hello to people. And so I was just kind of going around talking to folks and just letting them know how much I just enjoyed this environment. I just enjoyed this experience. But just getting a chance to go all the way around. But I would just say right there in the middle. And we were like three. I don't want to be on the front row because a lot of the players are kind of in the way. But just being like 3 or 4 rows up, you're just
Mhm.
above the players and you can kind of see everything. And just hearing the sounds, just you can always hear the ref play on every time that there's a mark, but just hearing it and just hearing the whistles and all that, just being right there close to the action was pretty exciting.
That's fantastic. Again, there's no everybody's got a different place, but always fascinating. So I look forward to the ones that haven't been to Australia where they think they're going to sit. So, and then I always end my episodes when it comes to my supporter chats is favorite game of footy you have ever seen, or in this case maybe even listened. Favorite game of footy live on the telly doesn't matter. Favorite game of football you have ever seen.
Well, I'm trying to think who we were playing in finals. Gosh, I can't even think of who it was now. It might have been Carlton. You'll probably remember better than I would. But it was the second game that we played in the playoffs in 23. And because I didn't really have much expectation being a 7 seed
Hmm.
going into the 23 playoffs or the 23 finals, but getting a chance, we winning that first game that got us, out of out of that round, and then that next round where we were playing one of the top four, being able to beat them, and then going and then playing Collingwood in the preliminary final. Um, the game before was the win, but the fact that we were playing at the G with 95% Collingwood supporters and leading a good bit of that game in the preliminary final against the eventual champion, and just being so close to winning that game. I would say that was probably my favorite game because I actually got to watch that game because it was a 4:30 a.m. kickoff, and I was able to stream that one. And I went into work early, and started taking care of some things at work, so I had a little bit of time to watch that. And just seeing like this is my team, this is little GWS in the biggest stadium in the Southern Hemisphere, going toe to toe with who I feel like is the best club in Australia, and we're going to win this game. And of course, things didn't. We went on. I think the last 5 minutes of the game, we couldn't get it out of our own half. but that was just an exciting game just to see how how they had grown from being 4-8 early in the year to being a fingernail away from winning that and being in the grand final. That was a that in my short, just 2 season history of being of following the Giants. That's probably my most exciting game.
That was a fantastic one for sure. I remember that. And the I think the game you're talking about was actually when they knocked off Port Adelaide. I had to pull it up on my computer because trying to figure out it's like the win before it was Port Adelaide where they went into Port Adelaide and knocked them out in straight sets by 23 because that kind of shocked the world because I think a lot of people expected they got past St. Kilda in the elimination final, which many people expected them to do. But it was Port Adelaide going on the road and beating Port Adelaide in Port Adelaide. I think was the shocker. But no, that preliminary final against Collingwood, I remember I got up for that because I wanted to watch it. And still to this day, if you ask me, I think GWS probably should have won that game. They just fell a little bit short, but that was an incredible game. That was a finals that was hard to not watch because the grand final was just as good a one the next week where Collingwood knocked off Brisbane was absolutely fantastic. So no, that is great. Clay, this has been fantastic. I thoroughly love chatting with somebody that absolutely loves this sport. And I love that though it may again everybody's passion is different. I love your passion for the sport. It's been fantastic. I love your stories. That was absolutely so cool that you got to meet the team before some people that have been in Australia their entire lives. So that is absolutely magnificent. So thank you so much for hopping on a podcast and sharing your stories. It's been absolutely magnificent.
It was my pleasure, and I really enjoyed talking to you, Donnie. I appreciate your passion for the sport and bringing it out to the masses. And keep on doing the good work you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this episode today. Again, keep an eye out. More off-season supporter series, more American and international fans still to chat with. I'm going to try to get as many clubs as I can into the summer. Let's get to March and get back to the AFL and the footy getting started back, along with the state league stuff that you guys know that I will cover. So, that is going to do it for another episode of Donnie's Disposals. If you like what you're listening to, please like and subscribe, and we'll be back with more footy coverage very, very soon.